So this guy had another shop install this airbag system on his truck, and it only lasted a week. So let me show you what I found. So initially I just found this one terminal was melted, and I thought maybe it was just a loose connection and I could fix that and everything would be good to go. But then I got to looking at the rest of the wiring, and I could tell there was a lot wrong going on with this setup. So let me show you all the things I found wrong with this, and let me show you how I'm going to fix it. Starting out at the beginning of the circuit, this is where the two wires connect to the battery. There is no circuit protection at all whatsoever. So if this thing had shorted out somewhere, it would have pulled as much amperage as the battery could supply. And best case, just melted the wire and cut it off. Worst case, burn this thing to the ground. So next we have just one 10 gauge wire that is supplying all the power to all the components in the back of this truck. So we've got two compressors running this system that are rated for 23 amps. So that's really undersized for what these compressors need and what that wire is capable of carrying. So next problem is, this is the wire that's connected directly to the battery. It's going to this cutoff switch. So anytime the system pressure dropped below a certain amount, those compressors were kicking on. So he was having problems with his battery dying after this thing was installed. What was happening was, since it's hooked up straight to the battery and not an ignition fed supply, anytime the pressure dropped, them things was kicking on and draining the battery down. Let me show you what I fixed. So first of all, we've got inline fuses now. And to fix the issue of only having one 10 gauge wire supplying power to both compressors, I repurposed the original ground wire as another power feed. So now I have two separate 10 gauge wires, one for each compressor. So the biggest change I made was, instead of having the compressors hooked directly to the battery, I now have the battery cables going to these relays. And I use this cutoff switch as a ground cutoff for each of the relays. So both of those are wired up to one side of the switch. The other side is wired up to the ground. And on the other side of the relay for the control circuit, I've got it ignition fed. So that'll prevent the battery from dying from this thing running when the key's off. So now the only time the compressors can run is when the key is in the on position. And instead of having the compressor ground going back to the battery through just one 10 gauge wire, I now have two separate ground wires run for each compressor going directly to the frame. Instead of all of the system power going through this switch, it's just a low voltage control for the relays. So this thing won't get hot and melt anymore. And it is now functional and safe. If this video has been helpful in any way, follow me for more.